for battle droid! Take him down! They've sent in the supers! What's those wrist rockets? For the Republic! Hey, everyone fire on the wheezing guy! Just like the simulation.
Star Wars Battlefront 2, a childhood gem of gaming nostalgia for many. But was it as good as you remember? That is the question that this video seeks to answer. Has the original 2005 release of Battlefront 2 stood the test of time? And can it stand on its own 2 feet against its identically named nephew? Wind the clock back over 18 years. LucasArts are a Goliath of game design and are looking to become a publisher, utilising the efforts of external teams, rather than constraining themselves to only in-house projects. They approach a small troupe of developers based in Los Angeles, named Pandemic. Oh, how that name has aged poorly. Known only for creating sequels of previous Activision games, LucasArts tasked them with making a movie tie-in game for the up-and-coming Star Wars film. That game plays it safe, with its use of Jedi and vehicular combat, 2 parts of the Star Wars universe that always guarantee some kind of success. Around the same time, across the globe, an equally small team from Sweden revolutionized infantry-based multiplayer games with Battlefield 1942, a game that took the industry by storm. Infantry, vehicles, huge open maps, all brought together to create a realistic wargame that threw players into the best adaptation of World War II seen on a computer screen. LucasArts, seeing the rise of a new genre, the billions that the Star Wars IP is making, an IP that has war in its name, and how Pandemic's recent game, also based on war, and already had vehicles, they made a simple decision. Pandemic were to make Battlefield, but with Star Wars. 2 years later, and they deliver. A multiplayer-focused, large-scale battle simulator utilizing infantry, vehicles, and large open maps. LucasArts' decision had paid off. The original Star Wars Battlefront was at that time the best-selling Star Wars game ever, selling over 7 million copies by 2007. With George Lucas's final Star Wars film looming over the horizon, the decision was made to create a second game that would coincide with Revenge of the Sith's release, featuring maps and a story mode that would correspond with that film, as well as episodes 2, 4, and 5. Pandemic had just over 12 months to top a game that took over 2 years to make. Star Wars Battlefront 2, the good one, released to critical acclaim, with reviewers praising the game for building upon the systems they had set in place with their previous title. This time with bigger battles, more objectives, a single player narrative based experience, unique game modes, and space battles. Space battles. A mainstay of the Star Wars franchise. A Star War itself is just another name for a space battle. Titles like X-Wing, TIE Fighter, Rogue Squadron had already proved that taking the dogfights of Earth and placing them within the Dark Abyss was a strategy for exciting gameplay. And it had never looked better than it does in Battlefield 2, where it isn't even the main part of the game. Huge starships of gargantuan scale battle it out while small freighters blast at each other and a colourful nebula beautifully sits in the background. And here you are, a tiny fighter surrounded by giants. Dogfight with the enemy, dodging missiles and firing lasers. Bomb the enemy ship, disabling key systems and crippling defences. Or build a team and take the fight to them, landing within the enemy's hangar and destroying the vessel from within while battling pilots and marines. What do you notice here? Choice. You are given choice. Do you want to battle it out in space? Be strategic and avoid battle while dealing massive damage, or get boots on the ground and battle it tooth and nail face to face with the opponents. Every possible role a single soldier could play within a battle involving thousands is covered. Swoop down to the planet-based fighting and the abundance of choice becomes apparent. Pilot a vehicle and wreak havoc on infantry, securing positions and defending your team as you push forward. Sit on the back lines and pick off the enemy, ensuring their reinforcements never make it to the front line. Repair vehicles and machinery, destroy enemy defenses, steal opposition vehicles, and provide aid to your teammates. Become a Jedi, utilizing force powers and your weapon from a more civilized age, while you slice through countless foes like those very same characters seen on screen. Fly to the rafters and destroy your adversaries with surprise attacks and superior maneuverability. Or simply be the grunt, leading the front lines, guns blazing, blasting your way through enemy ranks. The ample amount of choice ensure that any type of gamer can find their place within the armies of Battlefront 2. For the most part, a lot of those roles simply sound like I'm describing the Battlefield games, and apart from an obvious inclusion, I am, which does beg the question how the creators of that franchise fucked it up so bad. A lot of the reason why Battlefront 1 and 2 are so fondly remembered by millions is that it was the first Battlefield-style game that many of us played. We missed the boat on Battlefield 1942 because a large percentage of us were console gamers in the early 2000s. Pandemic brought large-scale warfare to the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, opening the eyes of thousands of pre-teen and early teens around the world to what war games could be like. Medal of Honor may be cool, but it wasn't 64-man warfare fighting on the beaches of Kashyyyk with tanks, turrets and goddamn Wookiees. They say most people remember their first time the most, so perhaps that's why we all remember this game. We all played Call of Duty, Battlefield and any other myriad of shooters over the years, and we may remember them all to differing levels of praise and distaste, yet we always unanimously look back on Battlefront 2 with fondness. Battlefront 1 proved the premise that a large-scale war game could work in the Star Wars universe. The next logical progression was to add a narrative. Stories in Star Wars have always been risky. You either write a story so beloved that fans will rave about it for centuries, or create one that will be seen with so much hatred that many will refuse to see it as canon. What do you do when faced with a fanbase as rabid as this? You play it safe. You want to appeal to every Star Wars fan. You have 12 months, you aren't going to make a brand new story and you certainly are not going to make a new character that no one has seen before. You instead pick the only one that makes sense, the only one that spans both the prequels and original trilogy and who could realistically have been seen in every battle on every planet. Unfortunately, Anthony Daniels was unavailable at the time, so Pandemic went for their second choice. Temuera Morrison is the Clone Troopers. You need only look at the huge fanfare for his return to the franchise in The Mandalorian to show how much fans love him. The only thing better than securing a voice actor from the actual movie is being able to have him voice half the game's characters. The Man of 1,000 Faces was the perfect protagonist for a game where you can play over 1,000 people. Battlefront is about fighting on a battlefront, where people, including the player, die. So it makes sense to have the player controlling the character who canonically sounds the same as every respawn you will ever have. Before each mission, you hear a dialogue from Morrison describing how the clones of the 501st Legion felt going into battle. This story is regrettably no longer canon due to the changes introduced within the Clone Wars animated show, but in 2005, it was our first time looking into how the clones fought. How a person bred and raised for combat and programmed for unquestionable loyalty would react to the orders they would have to follow. How they reacted to their first battle with fear.
My first day as a member of the 501st. It was hot, it was sandy, chaotic. Nothing at all like the simulations on Kamino.
Or how their named superiors were more well known.
After disabling the final capital ship, General Kenobi and Skywalker took advantage of the opportunity we'd created and rescued the Chancellor. Took all the credit too.
And their regrets and guilt about what they knew would happen.
What I remember about the rise of the Empire is how quiet it was. During the waning hours of the Clone Wars, the 501st Legion was discreetly transferred back to Coruscant. It was a silent trip.
The clone troopers of the 501st become the perfect anti-hero for a mature narrative. You start the game as the undebatable good guy, fighting for the Republic alongside the Jedi, yet over time, you soon see yourself become the villain. In the space of 2 films, you find yourself switching sides. Or do you? To the 501st, nothing changes. They were fighting for the Republic, and by the time of the Death Star, they still are. Sure, they now call themselves the Empire, and they have fancy new armor, but they take orders from the same people. It's interesting to see how the Stormtroopers reacted to the rebellion. In the films, they're the plucky good guys fighting the oppressors. Yet from this soldier's perspective, they're the cowardly galactic terrorists who are solely responsible for the deaths of millions of your fellow men.
The poor souls who took our place in the detention area were completely wiped out when the Death Star was destroyed.
The narrator's motivations grow throughout the game. Where he starts as an expendable unit following his duty, by the final mission you could really feel the grizzled battle-hardened expression of a man who has lost many of his friends along the way, his anger and resilience culminating to his final battle on Hoth.
No one ever complained about the cold on Hoth. We never felt it. Even though we were blinded by blizzards, we could see the final end of the rebellion in our blaster sights.
From a gameplay perspective, the story mode acts merely as a 4-hour-long tutorial to introduce the player to each and every scenario they could possibly face in the multiplayer arena. Every role is utilised in every objective used, from the basic conquest mode to capture the flag hidden behind the thinly veiled cover of the Death Star plans. Even the Heroes vs Villains mode gets its own section. This isn't to disregard the story, however. The cutscenes, which utilise footage from the movies, with the excellent and compelling voice delivery from Morrison, makes playing this mode worth your time. But it is important to remember that these are otherwise bot matches with a little spice thrown in. It does make it clear why for DICE's first foray into the Battlefront series, they did the same. However, someone clearly forgot to tell DICE that 10 years had passed in that time, and with it, so had gamers' expectations for a campaign mode in a mostly online shooter. In an era of Call of Duty level spectacle, the simplicities of Battlefront 2's design leaves much to be desired. For a new player who holds no nostalgia to this game, they would get the same if not more enjoyment from simply watching a combination of all the cutscenes on YouTube. You can't blame Pandemic for this, however. Remember that LucasArts gave them only 1 year to create the game, so the narrative, for what it is, and as well done as it was still more than enough to cement itself into gamers' minds. Outside of the campaign, there are 2 more single player modes, and the original intention for the game, its multiplayer. GameSpy shut down their servers in 2014, but online play was re-enabled in 2017 through a patch. To this day, online play still remains active, however many servers are now left empty. Unlike many newer games, Battlefront 2's multiplayer feels uniquely uncompetitive and more fun in its gameplay. Whether this is due to its age or how the game teaches you to accept death as part of the overall gameplay loop is hard to decipher. I never experienced this mode back when I played the game on the PlayStation 2 all those years ago, so it is possible that once upon a time people did take their stats in this game seriously. The online modes play identical to the single player modes, except with more or less intelligent opponents, depending on who you are playing against. What is peculiar with Battlefront 2's multiplayer compared to that of other shooter-based franchises is that the multiplayer and single player do not feel like completely separate games. Playing against bots in a Call of Duty game feels innately different to playing online, and not just because of the removal of any unlockables. Real people feel like tougher opponents, even down to how they move. In Battlefront 2, online enemies can feel like single player AI at times, in how they move, react, and play. This may be due to the animations making it seem this way, or it's just a look at the ineptitudes of the average Star Wars Battlefront 2 player, but it is unique in how single player bot matches can offer as much enjoyment as a fully fledged online match. There's that word, animations. You need only look at one of the many Star Wars documentaries to see how hands-on its original creator was, ensuring each aspect of his films looked, sounded, and moved just right. It's no secret that George would be involved with every LucasArts Star Wars game to some degree, ensuring a base level of quality. While this clearly must have not been fully adhered to in all instances, I feel confident in believing that some involvement was seen with the Battlefront games. If there wasn't any, then it's a testament to how much care Pandemic took when recreating the movies. Every character, every vehicle, and every droid moves, looks, and sounds exactly as they do in the films. Each texture has to look gritty and broken, or shiny and smooth. Pandemic nailed the graphics, but it's the visuals that really sell it. Each planet is entirely unique in its presentation, from the orange craggy dust of Geonosis to the lush Italian villas of Naboo. Each location feels exactly like its on-screen counterpart. If you are to feel immersed in a Star Wars battle, then it has to look like a Star Wars battle, and Battlefront 2 delivers on every Battlefront. Space battles look identical to the opening of Episode 3. The Battle of Hoth looks like the Battle of Hoth. Attention to detail was taken to the extreme here for the hardcore fans. Ever wondered what it was like to run down those snowy trenches, command that towering AT-AT, or embody a space terrorist to cripple its legs with your fishing line? Battlefront 2 is clearly a game made by fans, for fans. Easter eggs are so frequent that it hardly counts as a hunt to go find them. Yoda's hut is quite literally a command post on Dagobah. Speaking of hunts, instant action makes its return, allowing the player to create and finely tune your evening's entertainment. Choose from every map with a variety of game modes. You have your standard shooter affairs, conquest, capture the flag, space assault, but there are also some additional Star Wars centric modes, namely hunt and hero assault. The latter places you and Mos Eisley, setting the galaxy's most famous and infamous characters against each other in a classic team deathmatch. I don't care how many epic battles you may have planned in your instant action, every other match was simply a warm up to this game mode. triple jumping through the skies to then force slam into the ground and throw your lightsaber in an epic combo of pure domination was the 1v1 me on Rustbro of 2005. If you had beef with a friend, you settled it here. Bonus points if you used movie accurate characters. Battling Maul versus young Obi-Wan, or Vader against old Obi-Wan, or Anakin versus medium Obi-Wan. No wonder they're bringing him back. The hunt mode pitted an army against the fauna of a level, such as the Ewoks of Endor, Wampas of Hoth, or the Gungans of Naboo. Mostly a gimmick, but as with all of Instant Action, it aims to add an additional 5 to 10 minute match that is unique enough to be entertaining for what it is. And who hasn't wanted to recreate Episode 6's Battle of Endor? Recreation. Playing what you saw in the movies. That's the main philosophy of the Battlefront games. See it in the movie, now play it in the game. Ever wanted to play that clone? Now you can. What about that Stormtrooper? You're there. This random rebel? You betcha. No other still active game in the Star Wars franchise has ever come close to making you feel like you're part of the galaxy. Not a main character, not some huge part of a massive story, just a dude or dudette fighting to protect or conquer a slice of this universe. Pandemic could have happily tied up the game here. They gave a succinct yet enjoyable story experience, the tools to create your own series of matches, and an endless multiplayer mode that refuses to die against all odds. They could have released the game to stores, patted themselves on the back and went home, but they had one more gift to give. Galactic Conquest remains the distinguished mode for me. I mentioned earlier how this game remains close to many of our hearts as it was our first large-scale war game. Well, Galactic Conquest is close to my heart and my brain because it is my first strategy game. Years before I sunk hundreds of hours into Rome Total War, Rise of Nations and Civ 5, I was conquering the galaxy on a nigh-on nightly basis in this mode. You command an army of your choice, conquering the galaxy one planet at a time, using your winnings to buy more fleets, more classes, and specialized upgrades to help you on the battlefield. If you met another fleet, then it was time to destroy them in space combat. This mode is wildly basic by today's standards, yet being able to create your own narrative as you grew and conquered against all odds stands out in my memory as my greatest time in this game, and perhaps some of my fondest times in all of gaming. Deciding that you want to show those clones who's boss and finally enact as many trade embargoes as you damn well please as the CIS, or crush those rebels for good and finally bring peace to the galaxy. With just an ounce of imagination, you could build your own Star Wars story as you swept your way planet to planet. Not everything is rosy. There are aspects that age the game. It's old enough to actually go and fight a real war in the UK, so some long in the tooth moments are to be expected. One of the lesser important points, the menu is locked at 800 by 600 pixel resolution on the PC. Not a huge problem, but it does make the text painfully small at higher widescreen resolutions. The AI certainly isn't winning any awards either. It works well at selling the idea of fighting, but as soon as you get involved, the illusion can sometimes come crashing down, as every enemy focus purely on you. And they should, because in most instances, your teammates are as much help as an unmanned tank. First person mode has aged about as well as any shooter pre-COD 4 could. The view model feels a little off and the reload animation equates to only a sound effect. If you can look past these otherwise relatively minor issues, there is a gem to be found here. IGN's review for this game is infamous for its relatively low score and generally negative points levied on the game, but one quote stands out. Battlefront is like a dream. As a kid, you dreamt of being in the Star Wars battles you had seen in the movies, like flying your X-Wing or battling the Stormtroopers at Endor or Hoth. Battlefront allows you to live your childhood dreams better than any media before or after it. Why is it that a game with over 3 years of patches still cannot capture the magic of a game from over 10 years prior to its release? Nostalgia may be one reason, but when both games rely on the player's nostalgia for movies that range from 15 to 30 years old, it speaks volumes that one hits the mark in most aspects while the other just misses it at every point. So close, yet so far. Space battles are still missing boots on the ground combat, vehicles still feel disconnected from standard gameplay and feel like a forgotten inclusion. How DICE of all developers dropped the ball on this one is a mystery to all. What Pandemic pulled off in just 1 year is legendary. A game that has gone down in history as not only one of the best selling Star Wars games, but one of the best selling games in general for the early to mid 2000s. A game that to this day spawns memes that millions of fans can relate to. What hurts the most is how far it could have gone. The game that was never to be. Playing Battlefront 2 today is like taking a peek into the looking glass of what could have been. Seeing the improvements made in just 1 year, and then to think what the team could have accomplished in multiple that with the new powerful hardware. Would Battlefront 3 have been the best Star Wars game of all time? Perhaps, but I guess we'll never know. Thanks for watching. Next time, I'll be covering why Knights of the Old Republic may be one of BioWare's best RPGs ever.